It wasn't so long ago that America's fisheries were in a state of collapse, with cratering fish stocks and well-meaning but impractical government regulations threatening the livelihoods of 1.6 million people and a $180 billion fish industry. But then, an unlikely alliance of environmental activists and commercial fishermen kind of miraculously turned things around, leaving the nation's 4 million square miles of fishing grounds healthier and more profitable than they've been in decades. Hello and welcome to USA Today's The Excerpt. I'm USA Today Senior Editor Dan Morrison. Here to talk about this crazy, hard-won turnaround, I'm now joined by Buddy Guindon, a commercial fisherman on the Texas Gulf Coast, and Scott Hickman, a charter fisherman who once saw Buddy and his ilk as ruthless competitors for ever-more-elusive fish. Now, the pair are traveling the world, talking about how cooperation and a new system of catch shares saved their livelihoods. That collaboration is the subject of a new book, Sea Change, by Environmental Defense Fund Executive Director Amanda Leland and author James Workman. Buddy, Scott, thanks for joining me.
It was our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Scott, let's start by explaining exactly what changed here. How was fishing being regulated before this new system was put in place?
Before our new management system, we fished under what we called a derby fishery, where we raced for fish. We ran in and out catching whatever the government told us we could catch at that time. And we were limited by poundage and days at sea and all these different different mechanisms used to constrain the fishery. And what that caused was folks like me having to go out in weather that was not fit to be fishing in, and going out in conditions where your vessel wasn't 100%. These were all because the government told you when you had to fish and how long you had to fish. And when you're raising a family, you need to have your income, so you did what you were told.
And Scott, what was it like for you on the charter side of things?
It was pretty much a disaster. Under that derby system that Buddy was describing, it was kind of a race to fish. So the commercial fleet would go out the first 10 days of every month and try to catch as many fish as they could in those 10 days. And they were, multiple trips in a couple of days, and they were incentivized to fish in closer to try to catch as many fish as they could. And those are the waters that generally the charter boats fish, the enclosed waters. And there was no fish left for the charter boat fleet. So, we have all these tourists that come to the Gulf Coast for their summer break or our spring break, etc. And we'd go out there and the ocean was devoid of any type of fish because they would get a jump on us and go out and just harvest everything. And it was just horrible for the charter boat fleet and the recreational fleet. And we really had there was a lot of dislike in the communities between, the recreation charter boats and the commercial fleet. And because they didn't leave anything for us. And we were very unhappy. And it was bad for business and bad for the community and bad for the economy from my side.
Buddy, what was life like at home and on the water before you switched over to this new system?
It was tough because normal people go see their kids graduate from different classes, and they go to their baseball games, and they attend weddings and funerals, and those types of things weren't available to me because I had to fish during the days when the government told me the season was open, and I had 3 kids at home. There was no getting around that. And the system was set up to fail. It caused us, like Scott said, to go out and fish in close to shore. We had a large problem with discards that fish, your next year's crop was dying. And the entire system didn't work well for anyone, not for the fish or the fishermen. And we lived with that for many years. And glad things changed.
And that system really encouraged a lot of illegal activities too. And there was a lot of shenanigans going on with the commercial side, and it was hard for the law enforcement side to even patrol because there's so many boats coming and going, and there wasn't any level of accountability. So you can't manage natural resource with basically zero accountability. And it trickled all the way down to everybody that wanted to use this natural resource. It was bad for the environment, bad for the fishery, and bad for the economy.
What does it feel like when you're going out and you don't want to be out and you're not catching what you need to catch?
Well, I could tell you honestly that I've held my head in my hands and cried because of the choice I made to be a commercial fisherman. And on days when it was so rough you couldn't fish, when we were already out there and we had to stay until we got our 2,000 pounds, it was tough. You know, I it caused me to think over my life's choices many, many times. It was a time when, relationship with my wife was strained a lot because she was having to handle all my children, and we have all boys. It was tough on everyone. It was tough on the kids, tough on my wife, but tough on me.
So, buddy, you and your colleagues, you're now turning a profit while bringing in fewer fish. How does that work?
So what happened was we went from the government controlling our fishing to us controlling our fishing. And what I mean by that is we got what they call an individual fishing quota or a catch share system. And what that means is the Gulf is like a pie, and you have this total allowable catch, and each fisherman gets a slice of that pie. And it created a market advantage where now instead of having fish the first 10 days of every month, 7 months a year, we have fish on a daily basis. We have fish every day available for restaurants to put on their menu. And by doing that, it caused the price of fish to escalate because now all the restaurants in town, all the restaurants in Texas, all the restaurants on the coast, anywhere have these fish on their menus. And so they want them every week. It was an amazing transformation. Plus, it allows us to go fish when we want to go fish. We have an amount of fish we catch for the year, and we can catch that when we want. So it allows us not only to build a better market, it allows me to go to baseball games and graduations and weddings, funerals, and all the things normal people. My life is actually back to normal after the catchers. Got it implemented.
You guys are actually joining us here from Galveston, Texas. There's a third leg to this table, and that's the Environmental Defense Fund. Um, Buddy, how did a New York-based advocacy group find common cause with commercial fishermen?
I voted against the system twice, so we didn't have common ground back then. But through hard work, Environmental Defense Fund was able to bring fishermen to the table that were listening. I wasn't listening at the time. I voted against the referendum twice. And these fishermen that came to the table and were listening and understood what was going to happen when they changed the system, worked very diligently with Congress and with Environmental Defense Fund and their fellow fishermen to get them to understand what was going to happen. And there was actually some fishermen that were in that group that were advocating very strongly for the catchers that gave a guarantee to some of their friends that were in the fishing business that said, if you don't make the money you made last year, we'll pay you for that. We'll compensate you for that. And that was a brave thing to do because I guess they understood the system better. Thank goodness that there was people there that were more involved in fisheries and more aware of what this system could do for us because it has changed our lives.
That's an amazing act of faith for one operator to guarantee the profit of another operator. An important part of catch shares involves using some fairly cutting-edge technology to verify and record what every single fisherman or boat is bringing in. Buddy, can you tell me how that works on the commercial side?
Yes. So when I was young, my father always said I'd have an ankle bracelet, and I actually have a tracking device on my vessel now from the federal government. So he was right. Our vessels are tracked everywhere we go. We have to call them when we leave the dock. And then 3 hours before we return to the dock, we have to call them again and tell them how much fish we have and where we'll be landing so that law enforcement can meet us at the dock. And these things weren't something that the government thought of to put regulations upon us. We as a fishing group came together and said, we want everybody to be on the same playing field if we're going to be in this new management system. So let's make the rules where everybody will know everybody's doing what they should be doing. Just like Scott said, there were a lot of pirates out there. He keeps pointing his finger at me, but I don't know. But it did change our world.
Buddy, is there some sort of scanner that you're running these fish across, like a supermarket scanner for your fish catch?
Yes. So our Gulf Wall program is a traceability program, and it goes beyond that. It actually tells you the captain that caught your fish, the boat it was on, where it was caught in the Gulf, and how it got to your plate. It's a whole story of the fish from the water to the plate. It's been really good for our marketing end of our business here at K's.
Scott, what does that look like on the charter end? How do you keep track of so many fish coming out of the sea with so many anglers pulling them out at one time?
So now we've actually, got fish to catch again because of the catch shear system, and it's really rebuilt the fishery. In fact, I think catch shears have rebuilt 90% of the fisheries in the country now. We're excited to have the fish. So we've started the charter boat side kind of followed what the commercial side did. And we went and got our own allocation of fish. It's called sector separation. So we wanted to manage that pool of fish just for the charter boats, but we wanted a really high level of accountability other than the regular way the government used to just send, random people to the dock to check our catch. So we have started testing in the Gulf on big head boats, which are the multi-passenger boats and the 6-passenger boats, a new system with Starlink. It's got a processor in these small fisheye cameras. And whenever the boat stops, it starts videoing. And that processor is connected to the cloud via Starlink on an AI-based program that we've helped develop. And the AI is able to capture those fish immediately when they're coming out of the water, how many are being caught, how many are being thrown back, how many are being retained. It knows exactly what kind of fish they are, and it puts it all in a nice little package of data that can be sent directly to the National Marine Fisheries Service. The new technology is just incredible. We tested it on all these various boats on the charter boat side, and then Buddy's folks over on the commercial side are fixing to test this same system. We're hoping to start implementing these programs in the next few years, which will take any questionability about how many fish are coming out of the water, estimation of how many fish are actually in the water, because you get different data sets like catch per unit effort, how many fish that you throw back may die due to water depth and barotrauma, because the Starlink knows it, the location, the water depth. It's pretty amazing technology. So we've come a long, long way. And through technology, we're able to take that next step to have really true sustainability in this fishery and all of our U.S. fisheries through technology.
So you're telling me I can haul a fish out of the water and a camera on your boat is going to snap a picture of that fish, identify it by its markings, estimate its weight, and send that into a database by the time your boat is back on shore?
It does it instantaneous. In fact, we've got these camera systems on some head boats in the Gulf. I think we did 4 this year, and they take up to 100 people fishing. And if 100 fish come out of the water, the AI snaps pictures of that 100 fish, identifies those fish, and puts that into the package in a microsecond. It's amazing.
That's really something. That's really something. If the fisheries have rebounded, and as you say they have, what's the biggest challenge that the American fish industry is facing right now?
From a standpoint of, we talked about how the commercial side has really got their house in order, and they've got, these accountability measures with what Buddy was talking about, the vessel tracking system, the hail in, hail out, a law enforcement checking their catch. They're 100% accountable. Getting the recreational side, which is a huge part of the fishery, and being able to capture that side about how many fish they're actually catching, because we don't have a good estimate. And using technology for those folks to be able to do that and get the charter boat side over the finish line on our electronic monitoring and electronic reporting, which we're light years ahead of the purely recreational side. I think it's overall across the United States, there's millions and millions of recreational fishers, and we just don't have a good way to count what they're catching. Now, understand these fish that are being harvested and being thrown back, These are slow growing ocean fish. A lot of these fish grow 1 pound a year. So if you're throwing back millions of pounds of fish that grow that slow, it takes a long time to replace those fish that are being wasted. So if we can get to a point where we have really good, high level of accountability of what's being kept, what's being thrown back. A lot of these fish that are being thrown back are being eaten by sharks and dolphins or floating off because they've died from barotrauma. We're able to capture that number and stop that and go more to a full retention fishery on the recreational side. There'll be more fish than everybody could ever imagine.
Why are we seeing so much seafood from essentially foreign seafood on American shelves now? If our fisheries are flush, why do we still have so much seafood coming from Asia or from South America?
Our country is a huge consumer of seafood, and we import up to 90% of the seafood that's consumed in this country is imported. Now, we do that because of the demand, and we need to supply this protein to the people in this country. But the fact is, since our fisheries have gone through this metamorphosis of change, we have more fish in the oceans than we can actually sell right now. We were just recently in California, and one of the things we learned out there is their fisheries have rebuilt to a point where they can bring more fish to the market than they could put out into the market. There's not enough demand because the markets have kind of gone away because of the lack of fish. And now our challenge is to rebuild these markets, to bring back the folks that used to buy their seafood from the U.S. So that's the biggest thing we can do for our fishermen in this country, is make sure we're trying to buy local seafood first. And then if we can't get it local, we look for a seafood from somewhere in the nation. And then our third step, if we have to, bring fish in from other countries.
Just this week, we saw yet another warning, and no joke here, of radioactive shrimp that were imported to the U.S. from Southeast Asia and wound up, for sale in a lot of American supermarkets. Is American seafood really safer? And how can families and restaurants ensure that what they're buying isn't loaded with disease or radioactive isotopes, as we just saw?
One of the problems that we have with imports of any sort is the amount of inspection that we do. We inspect less than 1% of the products that are shipped into this country. So if we're catching radioactive shrimp that are being imported here, you got to think about that. If we're only inspecting 1%, how much of that seafood is getting through and getting into the markets in this country? It's a challenge, but it's a challenge that has to be met. We need to know what's coming into the country, and we need to have our government making sure it's safe for us to eat.
And the restaurant industry's gotten really addicted to cheap imports. And like you're saying, with the radioactive shrimp, what's getting through that we haven't caught, and that's really not healthy for Americans. And I think that's the challenge to the media and leading journalists like yourself, is to educate the public on why locally sourced, sustainable seafood like Buddy brings to the dock is a really healthy choice and the better alternative than these imports. And being able to do aquaculture here at home in America that's done sustainably, done correctly, will be the next step that we need to really look at, instead of this stuff that's raised overseas, that's done in ways that doesn't have any checks. It's got polluted water. It's being fed really nasty stuff, full of antibiotics, full of chemicals, and that stuff's being brought in, and it's raised cheap. In the restaurant industry here in the United States is addicted to that cheap imported stuff. And I think that people need to be more educated on what they eat, and what Buddy's bringing into the dock, and other folks like he talks about, these California fishers. Safe, sustainable, locally sourced, healthy seafood is what Americans really want. They don't know. So we have to educate people on that there is a choice, and that they should be making a better choice for their families, their kids.
And what America does need to know is that fresh seafood is not cheap, and cheap seafood is not fresh. And that's a very easy statement to understand.
So, guys, we're living in a crazy political moment, and a lot of Americans are primed to see important issues or nearly every issue through a strictly political lens. What does the rebound of American fisheries say about problem solving and bipartisanship?
The ocean and the fisheries, they don't know anything about politics, okay? Fish don't care about politics. Having healthy, sustainable oceans, healthy, sustainable stocks of fish that we can harvest, whether it's recreationally, commercially, is a bipartisan thing. It's just like I talk to a lot of people, especially up on the Hill in DC, about funding programs to make sure that we have healthy stocks of fish here. The current president wants healthy stocks of fish. He's done executive orders to increase seafood production in this country. Well, that takes money. It takes science-based management. So we have to fund those programs that NOAA, the National Marine Fisheries Service, to have sustainable stocks of fish. So we have to invest in those things. And I think everybody in this country, regardless of where they fall politically, wants to eat healthy fish, have oceans full of fish, and be able to go catch a fish when they want to. That's bipartisan. So everybody should get on board with that. We have so many common things that we can be working together on instead of arguing about cultural wars, and focus on important things like fisheries, clean water, clean air, great local coastal communities, coastal economies, keeping our working waterfronts running. Those are things that we can all agree on, regardless of partisan politics.
Buddy and Scott, thank you so much for joining us from Galveston, Texas, here on The Excerpt. Thanks for watching. I'm Dan Morrison, and I'll catch you next time.